So this is how Erin became a panelist for today. So we were putting this is a great story.
It's a great story.
So we were putting all this together for this weekend, and I was trying to get guests for certain episodes and so on. And we were pretty locked with everything. And then long story short, I hear from the Skirball, hey, there's someone is looking to become a guest panelist because we're showing our favorite episode. And I went, oh gosh, well, maybe it's one of the episodes we have a guest for. So then I find out it's this one. So it just absolutely worked out perfectly. So my first question for you, Erin, is like, what is it about this episode in particular, and where does it rank in your list of favorite Star Trek episodes?
Well, thank you for having me, for the introduction. With my background, as you introduced to people, being in astrophysics, Captain Janeway was a huge inspiration for me. Got me through the darkest days of doing my PhD. Anytime I wanted to procrastinate, I would watch Voyager. And I think this episode particularly gets to highlight Captain Janeway's background as a science officer, which is not something that they necessarily go into that much. So it highlights her as a character. You get to see her be a scientist and start to geek out about that stuff. And it's got all my favorite elements. I mean, there's like a nerdy academic dude who gives him a hard time. Like it's a great episode. And genuinely, I'm not even kidding. Like Deep Space Nine is probably my favorite series overall. Spock is probably one of my favorite characters. So I've got different touch points with all of the different series, but of all of them, this is my #1 favorite episode, because it's just everything I love about Star Trek in one episode.
But I feel like just over these years, Voyager has kind of been I would say underappreciated. I mean, all the shows are great. They all have their merits. They were all groundbreaking, trailblazing for different reasons. Voyager, of course, Janeway being in command of the Voyager and everything like that. But what were some of the ways that you saw Voyager being unique?
Yeah, I think it gets a lot of credit and attention for having the first woman captain of Star Trek and leading a show, and I think that has such an effect on people who don't normally see themselves represented in television. And being a woman in science, I didn't have a lot of mentors growing up. And so I would look to, the X-Files was the first one that got me into that, Dana Scully. But it really, I think it's episode like 3 of Voyager where B'Elanna and Janeway start to find the warp particles, and they're trying to science together when B'Elanna's kind of becoming the chief engineer. And to have both like an engineer and a science officer both be women, both be just excited about science and problem solving isn't something we get to see that often. And so I think like that's such a great gift that Voyager gives to so many people. And I think Star Trek across the board, talking about the legacy of Star Trek, it has given so many people, not just white women in science, but a lot of people get to see themselves portrayed on screen in ways that they don't see themselves otherwise.
When I was growing up, I wanted to be Kirk. But because when I was growing up, my family, my brother, my dad, all my friends were diehard sports fans. I was not. So my heroes were Star Trek. And I realized because I was the outsider that I was really Spock. But,
Right.
But the other thing about, you mentioned Deep Space Nine being your favorite, which I'd love to hear, because like for a long time in the 90s, I watched Deep Space Nine. I don't think I appreciated it at the time. But, when you get older, you get a little wiser and you've been through stuff, you do appreciate things differently. And next to Next Gen, Deep Space Nine is my second favorite after the original series.
Well, I think streaming has helped a lot of people discover Deep Space Nine because it was one of the first to really do serialized storytelling. And so if you missed a week, you kind of missed a lot. some of those Dominion War episodes, if you missed one, you're in trouble. And so now with the advent of streaming, people can just binge it, and it's great.
Well, with Counterpoint, we get to see Janeway the scientist, but we also get to see we get to see, I mean, Kate Mulgrew explore a romantic side of Janeway, which, you know, after 7 years, she criminally did not get to explore that side of her. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I love this aspect of her as a leader and the decisions that she's made, because they're very open about that. They're not using her as, Kirk and even Picard, they've had their dalliances as captains throughout the time, and believe it or not. But they really talk about it in the episode Fairhaven, which usually gets, it's a goofy episode. It's a holodeck Irish episode. I love it. It's a great one when I just am in the mood for something fun to watch. But this is where Janeway starts dating one of the characters in this Irish village in the hologram, and she starts messing around with him and creating a character more to her liking. It's delightful. But there's some really good discussions, particularly with the Doctor and Chakotay, who kind of call her out on it. She's kind of ashamed of it. She's adjusting these parameters, deleting the wife, and all of those things. And she really opens up about her struggles of having to be a single captain on this ship, where they're expecting to, worst case scenario, be together for 70 years. And, she talks about how people on the ship have got together, but she feels it's not right for her as a captain to betray that leadership. She has to continue being the leader for everyone as they go through. And so she doesn't like them seeing her in that vulnerable way. And so having that exploration in Fairhaven, in addition to this, I think is so great. And I mean, they kill it with the chemistry, right? Like, it works for me.
I mean, Mark Herrick, I think is his name.
Yeah.
He's
so good.
So good, because I don't care. Like, every time I watch this episode, and you know how it ends, you know what's going to happen, but you're still duped. You still, especially like when because he's got sort of this like smarmy approach, but he's still got this charm. But then when he comes in and says, I want asylum, like, oh, okay. And the shift in his tone becomes so serious that you actually believe him, even though you've seen it and you know how it ends.
Yeah.
But you believe him, like, oh, okay. But yeah, let's talk about their chemistry. I mean, it's palpable.
Well, similarly to that chemistry that Janeway and B'Elanna have just as working scientists together, it's great to see the two of them, Kashyyyk and Janeway, problem solve together, that they both get excited about it, and they're both up late. Dawn got rid of all the outer layers of official clothing, and they're just drinking coffee late into the night, trying to solve a science problem. And that's that excitement that I think, especially for people who are in sciences, or really any field that you have a deep passion for, you can relate to. You can relate to wanting to stay up all night and solve that problem. And then it's even better when there's someone there that you can yell at to think harder, which is still one of my favorite lines. She's like, think harder. Yeah, and so, but all of that being said, they have great chemistry. But what really works, I mean, the great part about that is she's still one step ahead of him.
It's absolutely one step ahead.
I love that.
It's such a great payoff, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've known so many people over these years. I've been living in California for 30 years. And I know people who have submitted spec scripts to the various shows, because Star Trek in the 90s was the only show that did that. And they got on staff, like Ron Moore did that. And I know other people who have, acted maybe on a couple episodes here and there. But I never knew anyone who got their PhD in astrophysics, and that was their door into Star Trek. So how did that happen?
It's a long road, getting from there to here.
Congratulations.
I can't not. It's genuine. I mean, I joked about watching Star Trek when I was doing my PhD. It was a huge inspiration, but I also discovered the power as, I finished my PhD, I'm also teaching, and I really enjoy teaching. And I found incredible power in using science fiction and popular culture to teach introductory science courses. because what's so difficult about learning science is you don't have reference points for this stuff. It's like, you know gravity exists, but you can't see gravity. And so it's really hard to kind of describe this sort of stuff to people. But you can put on a sci-fi episode that might use that in fun and unique ways and talk about what's real, what's not, how that science applies, and that really resonates with people. So trying to condense the story, but I left academia and I really missed teaching. And I just loved teaching students. And so I would go to pop culture conventions, Comic-Cons, and various events, especially when they were at their peak, you know, about 5 years ago or so, and teach the science of Star Trek, physics of Star Trek. And I have like an astronomy 101 in Star Wars talk, like all these different ones that I was able to connect with a lot of audiences, but really be able to teach science. And so when I moved out to Los Angeles, the you know, friends of friends, as you do out here, they connected me with one of the writers who got to see my stuff. I also had a great champion, Mary Chieffo, who played Laurel in Discovery.
Mary the Chief.
Mary the Chief is now one of my best friends, but we actually met at Sci-Fi Convention, where one of the Discovery writers who knew us both was like, you two need to hang out. And she would come to my science talks, and they were big champions, and the writers were Bowie Kim and Erica Lapolt, were really big champions in getting me to give talks at the official Star Trek events, at Star Trek Las Vegas, which has now changed, and the Star Trek cruise. And, but from all of that, you know, I had a meeting with Michelle Paradise when she took over as showrunner for season 3 of Star Trek Discovery, and she had me and a friend of mine, Professor Mohammed Noor, help out with that season. But, you know, because I was in LA and I was, you know, I'd like to think doing a good job on Discovery, they have all these other shows, and they realize through the fan events how much the fans love the science and really appreciate the science behind it. And Star Trek has had science consultants for a long time. Narain Shakar and Andre Bermanis both got their start in Hollywood working as science consultants in the 90s.
In the Star Trek the Motion Picture, I think the first science consultant they ever had on a Star Trek thing, Jessica von Puttkamer, was a science advisor for the first movie.
Yeah.
But you know, the thing is that it's sort of like this cycle where Star Trek has inspired people to become, you know, doctors and scientists and, you know, astronauts and so on. And now it kind of you're giving it back.
well, thank you. I mean, what makes me so proud about this is I really did. I mean, I loved studying science, and I wanted to become Dana Scully, and I wanted to become Captain Janeway. But then I discovered that wasn't actually the career that I wanted. I liked doing it, but it wasn't the career for me. And then once I started to work in television, that's when I was like, oh no, that's my destiny. That I want to create characters and help write shows that then inspire the next generation.
So because these 4 new shows, so Discovery of season 4, which premieres I think the 18th.
Yep, the 18th.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. You have Prodigy, which is on right now, and you have Lower Decks, which, full disclosure, is my favorite.
It's so good.
It is so good. Holy moly. Season 2 was like every episode after another was like, oh my God, that was great. Oh my God, that was great. And then, you know, I mean, ever since the season premiere, the second season premiere of Discovery, when Anson Mount stepped off the transporter platform as Captain Pike, I'm like, that's the Star Trek show I want. So we're going to get that sometime, I guess, early next year with Strange New Worlds. But so the question is, like, how does your approach differ? Because one's live action, the other is sort of hand-drawn animation, the other is computer animation, and, you know, the other is a flashback show.
Yeah, it's different for all of them. I have different relationships with the different showrunners, all great, but just very different. And it depends on the type of show that they want to tell. With Discovery, I work very closely with Michelle Paradise and the rest of the crew from story area where we're coming up with the broad strokes for the season all the way through post-production. So helping get the graphics correct, happening, you know, there will be little equations where I'm like, well, that character has my handwriting. Who'd have thought? And so that's really in depth. With Lower Decks, it's more of a treat. Like, Lower Decks is like my dessert, because they don't want it to be wrong. They want to do fun things with the science and the ethos of Star Trek, but they're less concerned with the science, which is totally fine. They are actually the first to give me a little bit of a shout out in the episode, because way in the background of the season 2 finale, Shax shouts when they're all shouting. He goes, "Dr. Erin said we can't do that."
Oh my God, I gotta rewatch.
It's really hard to help, but it's there, it's there. And, but with Prodigy, which just aired, and I highly recommend everyone check it out. The first episode you can watch for free. If you don't have Paramount Plus, it's on YouTube right now for a couple weeks. But what we've done with that is we still want to get the science right, and we still want to make sure that it upholds a lot of like the Voyager style of science exploration and discovery, but also be an inspiration for future kids to get into science. These are kids who discover a starship and they are learning about Starfleet and the Federation, but they're also kids who are interested in science. And I think a lot of kids are. Most, 10-year-olds know a lot about dinosaurs or black holes or whatever. And so we worked really hard to kind of create characters that would resonate with kids who want to get into science and want to follow down that path. So I highly recommend people watch Prodigy. It's very, very good.
So yeah, Prodigy. I watched. I was at that event. That's where I saw the first episode.
Yeah.
And it's like every show is different. Every show is so different. And this one it's definitely very different. But then like when sort of things get going, you're like, it's Star Trek. It's totally Star Trek. But so do you work from here and consult with everyone in Toronto where they're filming the live stuff, or have you gotten to go and sort of be on the set of?
I have not got to be on the set.
Let's go. You gotta go.
One day. I've been sent pictures. Star Trek Discovery is using the virtual reality walls, or not virtual reality, virtual realism, I think, walls. Where they project, they've seen that at The Mandalorian too, if you've seen any of the behind-the-scenes stuff, where they literally have like a massive screen that's creating these environments. So the technology is amazing, and I can't. One day I'll get to sit in the captain's chair. That's all I want to do.
You talk about how consulting is on each of the shows is very, very different, but Discovery is a live-action show, and so is Strange New Worlds, and obviously we haven't seen Strange New Worlds yet, but my question is like, Discovery is in the 32nd century, and obviously Strange New Worlds is in the 23rd. So, and from what I have gathered from interviews that they've all given so far, especially like Anson Mount and Ethan Peck and everyone, is that it's going to feel like a throwback, to the original series and so on. So, is the science for Discovery the same sort of approach as with Strange New Worlds, or is it different because the feel, the tones of the shows might be different?
Yeah, I appreciate you trying to get me to give up secrets about Strange New Worlds. That was a good attempt. No, in general, though, Discovery really, when they kind of hit the reset button in season 3 and went way, way into the future, they went to the future across the board. And so it was like they wanted to have science things that we haven't seen before. They wanted to have technology that we haven't seen before and really push the envelope. And like you said, having Strange New Worlds be like a prequel show, it's more tying to the original series feel. And so in that sense, my role is much more of the type to, it's like you saw in this episode, right, where they have the transporter field and they say adjust, the wavelength to 10 angstroms. And it's like, that's where I get the call. They're like, adjust the wavelength to bracket Dr. Erin, please fill this in. And so that tends to be a lot more of it. And I refer a lot to the original series. They have lots of, the technical guides and all of that to make sure that we still use the same technology and stuff.
Well, I just love, and I found this out during Star Trek Day, I just love that you're having Number One and Nurse Chapel on the same show, played by 2 different actors.
Yeah, and I love Majel Barrett. Like, she's amazing. And so, yeah, to get both of her original series incarnations in one show is
Dr.
amazing.
Benga.
Yeah.
When I was watching Star Trek Day, and they did that little reel where they were talking about the casting, I geeked the hell out. I just was like, oh my God.
See, you know what I love about this, though, is that and I'm sure you all have felt this too, as we're watching episodes from different series, everyone has their own series, like the one that you just love. Some of us love all of it, but there's always still one that really gets you. So you had that reaction watching the Strange New World stuff. I had that reaction seeing the Prodigy, trailer for the first time. I was like, yes, I love this so much.
Seeing Virtual Janeway. Cool.
Oh my God. Okay, can I tell a quick story about that?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a lot of tattoos, and I have a tattoo of Voyager on pretty prominently here on my arm. Yeah, the ship Voyager.
That's what I love. Oh man, that's awesome.
And I got that, and a couple weeks later, I was meeting with the Hagemans, who are the showrunners for Prodigy, at Nickelodeon for the very first time. I knew nothing about this show. And they brought me into the Nick Studios, which, of course, you still get that. It's amazing. It's like a Hollywood day. You're going to the studios, and you get to do that fun stuff. And apparently, Secret Hideout, the production company that I work with, they gave them a heads up about my Voyager tattoo. They were like, we're sending this woman who's our science consultant, and we're excited for you to meet her. We just want you to know she has a tattoo of Voyager on her arm. And of course, they know that they have Captain Janeway back. I don't know this yet. So they meet me in the lobby, and they're like, all right, come on in. You're about to have a very big moment. I'm like, okay. And I sit down in the writer's room. They're like, all right, you're sitting. We're bringing Captain Janeway back. I was like, just full chills. I didn't cry until I got into my car. But I will say, just having that opportunity to even write a single word that gets to come out of the mouth of a character who made me want to become a scientist is amazing. And I got to see that realized in episode 3, the one that aired this past week. We got to write some really cool science stuff that hologram Janeway gets to get on the bridge and explain to the kids what they're seeing. So it felt really good.
You talk about how, I completely agree. Like everyone has like the show that's like theirs, that they sleep with the Blu-ray under their pillow or something like that. I was 6 years old when I saw, it was 1974. And, so this is in the way before VCRs. And I would hold a tape recorder up to the TV, and I recorded episodes. And for years, between the tape recorded episodes and the photo novels, anybody remember the photo novels? and like I would record certain episodes and hit play, and then I would flip through the photo novels and look at the pictures.
That's
of like
awesome.
That was like my own VCR. But that's and also that was years before the first movie even came out, and just like this renaissance that we're in now, Star Trek Renaissance. See what I did there? With disco and all of them. And I have a crush on Mariner from. I totally have a crush on Mariner.
She's delightful.
She's awesome. Yeah. But yeah, it's such a great time to be a fan, and it's such a great time for great television, and that's what everyone on these newer shows from Secret Hideout, Kurtzman, everyone is doing.
Yeah.
So and I'm so happy for you because you're living everyone's dream.
Thank you.
Well, thank
really
you for
appreciate
reaching
it.
around and being like, I
Thanks.
got to be there at the Best of Trek Marathon.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Erin Macdonald, ladies and gentlemen.